Hey, brother.
Hey, brother.
So, you know how every franchise has been ruined by a remake?
Yes.
And Back to the Future hasn't.
Right?
Okay, so let's say that an executive, gun to your head, wants you to remake and ruin this Back to the Future franchise.
Kill me. Kill me.
Okay, he's killed you.
Yeah.
He brings you back. He's pointing a gun at John Wick's dog. He says, you have to write Back to the Future remake or I'm going to kill John Wick's dog.
Yeah. And John Wick's just looking at me with his puppy dog eyes. So is this like Back to the Future 4? So like...
I guess, yeah. It'd be like a Back to the Future, or like a reboot.
Okay, because you can't...
It's going to ruin the franchise. It's going to be a reboot.
Right. You can't have Michael J. Fox and Christopher Lloyd in it. So you're not really bringing back the original cast?
Right.
Okay.
Right.
I say don't bring back the original cast.
Yeah.
If that's the direction.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
not even a cameo? Not even a cameo?
I wouldn't even do a cameo.
No.
Yeah, I don't. I personally, I mean, like, I think that's something we should debate. But personally, I don't like them.
You don't like cameos?
I don't like them in popular franchises. I like them in non-popular franchise. Like, I like the fact that Django had the original Django in it.
Okay.
Because most people don't know what that is. But everyone knows who like the Ghostbusters are. So when you have the Ghostbusters in the new Ghostbusters movie, it's not, you're just,
you feel like, wow, I really wish I was watching the old Ghostbusters.
Yeah. Why don't you just make that movie then?
Yeah.
But, so I don't know. Do you like the cameos?
I mean, when you put it that way,
Yeah.
it does make sense where it's just kind of like, I enjoy the cameos. There is something kind of like kiddish in me that's kind of like, ooh, look at, there they are. But yeah, no, I get what you mean. I think that you're probably right, in that I also feel that way, where it's like, yeah, that original was way better, and I would have preferred to just watch that again.
Yeah.
But the trick with Back to the Future 4, Back to the Future reboot,
right.
Back to the Future,
right.
is that we'd have to make it good somehow. We'd have to make it watchable, which is not. Is that possible? I don't know if that's even possible.
It's not.
Like you're gonna ruin the franchise if you do it.
I think.
But we have a gun to our heads.
Right.
We have a gun to John Wick's dog's head.
Yes. So this is a gun to the head situation, because otherwise, I'd be like, fire me.
Yeah.
Or like,
we don't want to do it.
Yeah, like you're under contract. They'd be like, put me in jail. I don't want to do Back to the Future 4. So I think we're in agreement on that. Like, we should not do Back to the Future 4.
Yeah, this is part of the culture.
Yeah.
And you don't mess with the culture.
Right.
Like it's important.
But somebody has.
Leave it alone.
This is a literal. Somebody is sitting you down and forcing you to write this thing. So you may as well make it as good as you can.
Yeah. So we have to make the best of it.
So it's going to be a whole new story.
Yeah.
Do you do like Doc Brown has passed away, maybe even like a couple years ago? So it's not a recent thing. He passed away a couple years ago, and his estate is now either up for sale or some distant relatives are going to get his estate.
Maybe. I mean, here's the there's two ways of going about it.
Yeah.
Because it has to be a Back to the Future, which means they start out wherever they are and they go back to the past.
Okay.
So there's two ways of doing it. They start out modern day.
Yeah.
And go back to the 90s. Or they start out in the future and they go back to today.
Yeah, I think you start it today, modern day.
Yeah.
And it's a 2025 film. And then they go back to 1995.
Okay.
When their parents
so if they went back to the 80s,
then
it would be hard to justify them not running into Doc and Marty.
Yeah.
But if they went to the 90s, then we could be like, okay, yeah, whatever. That makes sense.
Yeah.
do they find the DeLorean? Do they build their own time machine, or is it like an uncovering of the DeLorean? It has to have the DeLorean in it.
Yeah.
It's got to be a DeLorean.
Here's the tough part, though.
Yeah.
Now that I'm thinking about it, if they go back to the 90s, though, they can find Doc Brown, who knows about the time machine, and he can help them. So, like, they almost can't go back to a time that Doc Brown is in.
No, Antha, you're thinking in the, you're not thinking in the fourth dimension. Doc Brown never made it to the 90s. He went back to 1885, and then he is traveling time to time. So he didn't live out his years in the 80s. He never made it to 95.
Yeah, he maybe never... Yes. He maybe never made it to 95.
Yeah.
Meaning, like, he could have been, like, in the 80s and then just been jumping around, and then eventually jumped to, like, 2020.
Yeah.
And then died of some weird disease that happened in 2020. And then... And then he passes away. And then, like, years later, they find, like, oh, you actually, are relatives of him, and this is yours. I guess this is now yours.
Oh, that's not bad. Like, maybe not the estate, but yeah, like, they're the next of kin.
Yes. And
so they inherit the DeLorean.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
And maybe they can be like, why didn't we learn about this sooner? And they're like, yeah, well, we found this guy. And we didn't know who he was. And then, like, eventually...
we got this letter.
Yeah. Yeah, eventually, like, I don't know, some weird processing thing. Where they were like... Because Doc Brown's been traveling through time. So, like, they're like, why is this random guy here all of a sudden? Oh, and then he's like a John Doe for a long time. And then they finally discover who he is.
I kind of like that. Where it's like, They had trouble figuring out who this guy was because he had multiple birth certificates.
Yeah.
From different years.
Yes.
And then also, like, we thought he died in the 80s, but then he resurfaced in the 20s.
Yes. Yeah.
And then, like,
that would make him 147 years old.
Right, yeah. And then I also like the idea of, like, if they don't know what the DeLorean does, they don't know it's a time machine, they just think it's a DeLorean.
Yeah.
And then it's all, like, decked out, and they're like, what the heck did he do to this thing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
man. Okay, wait. There's a little bit of a loophole here, or
yes.
Plot hole. Is it going to be the 2025 of today, or is it going to be the 2025 of the franchise?
Oh, yeah. I think it's the 2025 of today. Because the 2025 of the franchise is a different time branch.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So
I'm not thinking fourth dimensionally.
Yeah, so for some weird reason, it turns out that if Biff becomes famous and rich, we get hoverboards, flying cars, and a way better future than what we got here.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, that was the missing ingredient, was Biff needed to become famous for all that to happen.
Well, I like the idea of, like, it's a tangent. It's a different timeline.
Yeah.
So it's like, this is the timeline that's us, where Doc Brown maybe doesn't make it, and there's these distant relatives that are inheriting the DeLorean.
Yeah. I'm having so much trouble figuring out where to take this.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think it's because there's a part of me that wants John Wick's dog to die. Because otherwise we don't have the cool John Wick movies.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's what's difficult about this is it's you can't make a Back to the Future 4 good.
Yeah.
Without the original cast.
Yeah.
So doing a full reboot with, like, full new characters, it's not going to be good. And that's the problem that we're running into.
Yeah, I think it is the problem. I think you can make it fun if you pick a plot line that's different from the originals. Yeah. But mirrors the conflict of going back in time and potentially like erasing yourself.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's like, and then, like the first one did such a great job of that.
Yeah.
And for some reason, it's not the creepiest movie ever made, despite the fact that it's it's like the creepiest plot line.
Yeah.
But it's not the creepiest movie ever made.
Yeah.
So it's like, how do you do that?
So yeah, this is kind of the problem. Is we can make a movie.
Yeah.
We can make a Back to the Future movie, but can we make it good?
Yeah.
And we might not be able to. This might be the wall. We might have hit a wall here.
Yeah. You could have. I mean, I don't know. Now I'm thinking of like some weird storyline where like the person, the teenager who goes back in time is trying to, now they're like trying to do the opposite, where they're trying to get their parents. They're trying to get like maybe their mom or dad to not connect with their high school crush, because then later on they reconnect with the high school crush in this like weird cheating situation where now like their parent, like, so like, their mom, Carol, and their dad, Bob, but then it turns out Bob isn't their dad.
They get around. Oh,
their dad is actually the high school crush.
Jeez, this.
Yeah, right. It's so modern though.
It's like modern,
such a modern movie where just like these are the kind of like things that people deal with today.
I feel like it needs to be more kind of like the wholesome family. I mean, not that. I mean, when you really think about the content in the Back to the Future trilogy, like it wasn't super wholesome and family, but it felt like it was.
Yes.
It felt personal.
Yeah.
So I almost I almost wonder if like it might make sense for there to be maybe there's a little brother.
Okay.
So he's like 4, 5.
Yes.
And he ends up in the DeLorean and going back into the 90s.
Yeah.
And now like this older siblings have to like figure out where he went.
Yeah.
Like maybe like the DeLorean from the 90s. Like they find it and have to go back to the 90s to find their little brother to prevent him from like screwing things up in the future or from getting hurt.
Okay, so they've got
now it's personal.
They've got a little brother, maybe like
a toddler.
I don't know if it's that young. Somebody young,
like Goonies age.
Yeah, I don't know if I even go that old.
Okay. Yeah,
like 8.
Not so old that they know better, but like old enough to get into trouble.
Yeah, like how old was the kid from Lion? Remember that movie Lion, where the kid lost his older brother in India?
Yeah, that was a great movie.
What was he, like 6, 5 or 6?
Something like that. Yeah, like 5, 6.
Yeah, it's got to be something. 5 actually might be the perfect age because it's sort of like
it's kindergartner.
You're old enough to like walk around the block,
Yeah.
But you're not.
You can get into stuff. You can get into trouble.
But you're still young enough where like you probably don't know your parents' names, or your home address, or anyone's phone number.
It's like maybe like they end up going back in time.
Yes.
By accident.
Yes.
Lose their little brother.
Yes.
And then go back to the future and things are messed up.
Yes.
So they have to go back to the 90s to figure out what their little brother did.
Yes.
And try and undo it.
That's not too bad. What if the little brother does remember the name of the mom, and they end up sending him to the house of the mother, where this is her future son. And now
it's like teenage mother.
Yes. This is gonna be her son.
Yeah.
But like she doesn't know who this kid is.
Yeah.
But the kid knows she's mom.
Yeah.
She looks like mom, just younger.
Yeah.
And somehow mom misses her date with Bob, and Bob is dad.
Okay. But then
So now her and Bob don't get together, which means they're not going to have the kids.
Ooh, okay. So they don't go back to the future then, yet. what happens is
Yeah.
the eldest
Yeah.
disappears.
Oh, yeah.
And now, like, they're on a clock, and
Yes.
they're trying to figure out, like, what the hell just happened? Like, we have to figure out how to get Biffy back. Biffy.
The baby's name is Biffy? That's not bad. I like that.
It's named after
Biffy Buchanan.
Yeah, it's this great guy I knew in high school, Biff. He just had a bad run-in with manure, changed his life.
Yeah, so the oldest, here's the cool thing too, you have the oldest be the one who's like calm, in control, and knows what to do.
Yeah, yes.
Then they're like, okay, like here's the plan.
Yeah. Yeah, they start fading, they disappear.
Yeah.
And then it's like, it's, whatever, it's the older sister and the little brother, the 5-year-old. And she has to, like, now figure out, like, what did he do?
Are we doing the main character is going to be Lady McFly? Is that what we're doing?
I think we can. We can have, someone who looks like Elizabeth Shue. And we can, because it'll feel, I think, more like a reboot if we do that. If we get someone who feels like a 17-year-old kid, then it's going to be like, he's not as good as Michael J. Fox.
Yeah, so you want to...
Like, you're not going to get somebody as good as Michael J. Fox. So I think that you get someone as separated from Michael J. Fox as possible so that the audience doesn't feel like, I wish I was watching the original.
Yeah. How old is she?
I think she's got to be around the same age. She's got to be young enough that she has a 5-year-old brother.
16?
But yeah, like old enough though, like that she can figure out. She could be good at problem solving, so she could be like a high schooler. Yeah.
So the baby goes back in time.
I think that I think it might just be a plot hole if just the baby goes back in time.
Are there two DeLoreans? Or are there two DeLoreans? Or does she start looking through the notes, figure out like this is a time machine that went back in time, which means it still exists today somewhere.
Yeah, that's one route. We could take that route, or we could have all three of them end up back in time by accident.
Yeah.
And then they like lose their little brother.
Yeah.
And while like after they find him, then the older brother vanishes.
So the older brother, after they find him, the older brother vanishes.
Yeah, because it's got to feel like, okay, we found him, now we can go back.
Yes.
And then he disappears, and it's like, we can't go back. What happened?
Yeah. Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah.
Gosh.
Right?
Yeah, so you're saying all three of them go back.
Yeah.
At the
like
same
by
time.
accident, like they're just going on like a road trip or something. They hit 88.
Yeah.
Mr. Fusion activates, right?
Yeah.
They don't need uranium anymore. They've got Mr. Fusion.
All three of them go back.
Yeah.
How does it turn out that they meet? So all three of them meet the parent, or does just the baby meet the parent? Why am I missing? I'm missing some plot here. Go ahead.
All three of them go back in time, and then they lose their little brother.
Oh.
While they're in the 90s, they're like, "Where are we? What is this? Like, what's with all the colorful shirts?"
Yes.
And then like we lost our brother, and they're trying to find a brother.
Yeah.
Little brother finds his way to
the mom,
to his mom's house.
So like some security guard picks up the brother.
Yeah.
And then they're like, who's your family? And he's like saying the names of his brothers and sisters. Then he's like, my mom's name is, and they're like, okay, we'll give him to his mom.
Yeah.
And they look up the.
You know what? It would make more sense.
Yeah. And
might even be a little funnier if he sees his dad instead. Because his mom would have a maiden name at this point, which he wouldn't know.
Oh. Yes.
So he says his dad's name.
Yeah.
First and last name.
Yeah.
And then he goes, and it's like this 17-year-old version of his father.
Yeah.
Who's like, I don't know what I don't know what to do with this baby. Like, all right.
Yeah. That is a little bit better.
Yeah. So he's with his father. Yeah. Father misses the date. And then like mother's now like pissed at him, and it's like, oh, like Bob doesn't even show up to his dates. Yeah. He made up some excuse about having a 5-year-old to look after.
Yeah. Like, you have a son?
Yeah.
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 Okay.
So
that's not bad.
Like, whatever, 17-year-old father doesn't know what he's doing with the kid. He's out and about.
Yeah.
they see him, and they like grab him to go. The siblings. The siblings see him. They grab him to go. Father like looks around like, oh my gosh, somebody stole my kid.
Yeah.
And then they're like, all right, we got our kid. We could go back to the future. Older brother disappears.
Yes.
And they're like, what happened? What did? Yeah.
That's not bad. Yes. Do we have an issue with the time machine as well, going back, or is the time machine like always going to be capable of going? And they the main conflict is just them being like, how do we fix this older brother situation? You know.
That's a good point. I think that we don't have to address it until until the older brother comes back.
The older brother. Okay, just hear me out.
Uh-oh.
You know exactly where I'm going with this at first, but just hear me out. The older brother doesn't come back. No, hear me out. Then here's what happens. So they think they fix it because they get the parents. They get the parents together. Then she's waiting for the older brother to come back, but he doesn't.
Okay.
So then they're like, oh my gosh. So now she's like, we have to go back. And they're like, I don't know. And she's like, so they just think like that's it. So they go back, but he's there when they go back.
He's a part of the new timeline that they created.
Yes.
I like that.
So the conflict is like her being like, how about this? The DeLorean is set to go back on its own. And they're trying to like, she's trying to now change, like, don't go back in like, 32 hours. Don't go back in 32 hours, but it's broken. It's not gonna. Nothing's changing. It's set set to leave when you turn it on. It's already like preset, and then it's set to return at a certain time.
So there's got to be some kind of like chronicles of like Doc Brown, some schematic or some chronicle that like they have on them, and she's reading through it, trying to figure out like, okay, what happened? What did we do? How do we get back?
Yes.
And that could like maybe be part of it is like after some trouble that we had in 1885.
Yes.
Like I created a failsafe.
Yeah.
Where like, in the event that like we run out of gasoline or something, then we have this burst of energy for the flux capacitor burst of energy for the flux capacitor to like get us back to where we first started.
Yeah.
After 48 hours.
Yes.
So that we don't end up stuck wherever we landed.
Yeah. You don't end up stuck there, and you don't end up, leaving a time machine somewhere. It's gonna return.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's like.
So it could be as simple as that. Yeah. I like the idea of something like that.
You could even just have
a timeline.
You could even just have a panel that says like, return in 32 hours and seconds, and it's counting down.
A ticking clock.
Yeah, and they're like
a ticking clock.
Yeah, and then they're like trying to start the car, and it like won't, it'll start like da, but then they're like, it's not doing anything, and it's like it doesn't return until
Yeah.
So it's like maybe Doc Brown could go in there and like do some wizardry to get it to return faster, but they're not Doc Brown.
These are not scientists.
Yeah, they're just kids.
Yeah.
So they're just like, I guess it just returns in 32 hours. There's nothing we can do about it. Right. And then the brother disappears, and now this thing's going to return in 32 hours, and she's trying to like figure out how to like get it to not return in 32 hours, because she's like, the brother hasn't come back, but then it returns, but then he's in the future. Yeah. Because why would he return to the past?
Right.
He's not there anymore.
He's already disappeared.
Yeah, and there's now a new timeline.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah.
Man.
I know.
We may have actually come up with a story that's engaging.
And I think you just don't ever... I would just never reference the old stuff as much as you can.
Yeah.
This is just once again a story about a kid getting lost in time and trying to find their way back while fixing the mistakes they made along the way.
Yeah.
That's what this is a story about,
Yeah.
Now I'm going to tell you right now, we're not going to have a scene with the father and daughter going to prom together. We will not have that scene.
No, we're not going to do that.
A little bit. It's a little bit different than when Marty was with his mom. It would be.
Yeah. It'd feel very different.
Yeah.
I think that it would be something. It would make more sense for her. Like she'd feel more comfortable going to her mother.
Yes.
And like talking to her mother about like giving Bob a second chance.
Yes.
And like trying to fix it in that way.
Yeah.
Rather than like going to her father and being like, it's like sweep her off her feet, you know, like it's like, like it's just like it's a different dynamic. A 17-year-old boy does not, you know, easily make friends with a girl without it getting weird, and we're not gonna get weird. So we're so it's gonna be more like, no, I'm gonna like make friends with my mom, try and get her to like give Bob a second chance because he's a really great guy. He's a good dad.
What? I feel like what if? I wonder if there should be. We should do something weird where like, what if like the grandma is kind of like she's talking to like the grandma, you know, and the grandma's kind of like telling her stuff that like way makes sense, almost like the grandma knows she was going to go back, like the grandma's already met her.
Maybe.
Do you know what I mean?
It would make sense. It would make sense for the grandma to be more in the know because they're supposed to be distant relatives of Doc.
Yeah.
Right?
But
so the grandma would maybe be like a cousin.
Yeah.
And she's like, I know, like my cousin he did some weird stuff.
Yeah.
He did some weird stuff in the 80s.
Your voice is just gone.
Yeah,
I'm
turning into Harvey Firestein.
Yeah, your voice disappeared from going back in time. Yeah.
David!
Oh, from Independence. Yeah, the guy from Independence Day. Yeah, like, no, I'm saying, like, what if, like, somebody already went back in time to help fix fix a problem? So the grandma is clued into what's going on and is giving hints on what to do to fix it. Because the first time it didn't work.
All right,
yeah.
I don't want her to be too.
Does that get too complicated?
I don't want her to be too Deus Ex Machina.
Yeah.
Where it's just like whenever we have a problem, we go to grandma and she has an answer for us. Like.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Like, because I want them to feel a little bit like. A little more fish out of water. Like what do we do? Like, let's just undo what we did, and maybe that'll fix it.
Yeah.
Because then it'll be more like impactful when it doesn't get fixed.
Yeah.
And then when they go back to the future and like see their brother, it's like, oh, like he's still here, he's still alive, he's just part of this new timeline that we created.
Yeah. Oh, you know
what
would be
different.
You know it'd be a really stupid idea, but it might be fun. Is what if you set up a storyline where like their grandpa turned out to be one of these like famous mass murderers, you know?
What?
But they didn't know it. They didn't know it until like after he died. Yeah. And then they go back in time and now they're meeting with the grandpa.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh my, and now they're trying to like,
hey kids.
Yes, they're trying to make sure they don't get killed by their own grandpa. Is that too much? Too much? Isn't that a funny, I think that's kind of an interesting storyline though. But it might not be a Back to the Future storyline. That's the whole thing.
Yeah. It's a little dark. It's hard to say. You know, when you really think about the content of the Back to the Future trilogy, it's really dark content. It's just done in such a light, fun way that you don't even notice.
Yeah, you don't realize it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, when I was a kid, the scene where Marty's looking at the picture and he's like disappearing always creeped me out as a kid.
Yeah.
That like that means somebody could go back in time because you don't really realize as a kid like people can't go back in time. That means someone can go back in time and just erase me.
Yeah.
That creeped me out. So I think even kids today still get kind of creeped out by that scene because it is a little bit like it's very real, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Without any show that you see that has time travel, you're like, don't do it, Miss Frizzle.
Yeah.
You're going to undo Arnold.
Oh my gosh. It turns out bad. Yeah. I don't know. What are we missing, though?
I mean, there's a bunch of stuff, but it's like, I think as far as a plot line that's actually engaging enough that people are not going to be pissed off to watch it.
Yeah.
I think we've at least come up with that much. Beyond that, it's just a matter of, like, we need to make sure that it's entertaining throughout.
Yes.
We can't really have any lull.
Yeah.
Because the original Back to the Future is just like it's fun all the way through.
Yeah.
So it's like we'd almost have to write it like it's a series of short films rather than one feature length film, where every scene has kind of a its own like plot line.
Yeah.
I can't think of the term for it, but
climax.
But like they're like it needs to have like its own full
resolution
kind of story that like keeps you engaged. And it's just like strung together where it's like problem after problem after problem. Like we can't have it be just drawn out in any way. So we'd have to put in a lot of like fun things, and we'd have to try and avoid, I think, references to the original as much as possible.
Do you have a Doc Brown character, or you just not have a Doc Brown character? Because like in the first one, Doc Brown is that character who kind of like knows stuff and is helping Marty, and but then it's like, that's why I was trying to like pull the grandma in, but I was like, like, is there just no character who knows what the heck is going on? Or Doc Brown could be that character in the notebooks where she's just reading through the notebooks and kind of like learning, but then it's like, how much fun is it to watch somebody read through notebooks?
Yeah. That's a good point. I don't know, man. Like I think that it would have to be somebody quintessentially 90s and like, and doesn't necessarily have to be like a scientist. They just have to be a little bit more well-read. Like maybe a lawyer, someone who can, or a doctor, like somebody who could read through and actually like maybe understand, like,
what if
an engineer?
What if she finds Michael Biehn, the actor from Terminator who played Kyle Reese, and she's trying to get him to explain to her how to go back. And he's like, I don't know. Just
dude,
like in
that
the
would
movie,
be hilarious.
Build the thing, just like in the movie,
That would be hilarious.
But she ends up finding she finds kind of like a famous actor that she's just,
It could even just be like someone who like it could be. I love the idea of having it be Michael Biehn. But it could be like it's just a conspiracy theorist, like one of those like guys that has like a cardboard sign. And it's just this conspiracy theorist in the 90s who just believes everything that she's saying. And so it's like, because this is the only guy that believes her, like she's trying to get him to help her out. She could, but he doesn't really. I don't know. It's just someone to bounce off of, but I'm not sure.
She could have a teacher, like at school, who kind of talks about this stuff, Then she finds him, but now he's like way younger, and he's just like, I don't really know about any of this stuff, At this point, he doesn't really know. She sparks an interest in it. In this guy. Who's like her dad's age. So he's like her age now. He could be even older than her dad, so that now he's like kind of in his 40s or something like that, or 30s, I think we should make it maybe a female teacher, so that the audience doesn't feel like, is there going to be some weird romance like now she goes back and she's going to have a relationship with this 40-year-old guy. And she falls in love with this guy and stays back in time and sends her brother back by himself, and she stays back in time. That's the Back to the Future movie I would write. The one with the serial killer grandpa. And serial killer grandpa and an inappropriate relationship with a 17-year-old girl and a 45-year-old man. Well, he's a normal age at this point, though. Right. In the future, he's eventually going to go back to the future. Well, she doesn't. Well, what I'm saying is, in my Back to the Future, she doesn't go back. She stays there, sends the brother by himself. And then everything just disappears like Thanos. Just the Thanos complete disappearance of everything. Like, oh no, I made a mistake. Oh man, I don't know. That's the Back to the Future I want to watch. I almost don't even want that like character to bounce off of, like, or if they're there, they're a small part of it. Like I feel like it starts to get a little too cluttered at that point. But I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. It's more something that you can't. I feel like I wouldn't know until I actually started writing it. You know? Like, sometimes you can't really know until you get into it, and it's like, okay, this is starting to get jumbled up. Yeah, it's tough because it's like, part of the conflict with Doc Brown was he built the time machine, but then Marty's going back to a time before he builds it. So he doesn't even know how to build it. He's like kind of learning along the way. And the bigger The bigger conflict is more just getting him back to his normal time in a time machine that I don't know how to power this thing. That's another cool thing too, is like them going back, you could have the ticking clock of them going back. But, you know, in the first one, the way they went back was Marty knows future information that helps them in the past to go back to the future, you know?
Right, yeah.
But, I mean, I guess we don't need to necessarily have that.
No, yeah. I mean, if there's, like, a teacher, like a science teacher, who, like, she goes back and then she goes and finds her and she's the same age. Yeah. And she's like, you're into this stuff. You're like, you know, you're into like Star Trek and stuff. And she's like a 17-year-old girl in the 90s who's trying to like keep it secret that she's a Star Trek fan.
Yeah.
Like, no, I'm not. Like, what are you talking about? You know? Then like that could be kind of a fun little, you know, like obstacle where she's like,
pre Big Bang Theory.
Right.
You didn't want to tell people you were into Star Trek and Star Wars.
No, Star Trek. Contrary to popular belief, Star Trek was not thought of as cool in the 90s.
Yes.
But now, Star Trek is super cool.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know how I feel about it so far. I think there's something there where you could make an entertaining movie out of it, but I feel like it's missing so much.
Well, there's so much in the original.
Yeah.
Like, there's so much to what makes it good. It's not just that it's a time travel movie or that there's, like, this dynamic between the two characters. Like, there's a lot going on.
Yeah.
So it's like, the amount of work that would have to go into this script is maybe more work than we have time for in a single episode, you know?
Yeah. Well, I think it's also because it's like, you're trying to compete with the first one and make a movie that's equal to the first one. Like, you don't want to make a lesser Back to the Future movie if you're going to bring it back. You want to make something as good, you know, if not better, which is impossible, but you want to make something as good. And then it's like...
You don't want to settle.
Yeah, so I think, you know, I think the grandpa...
Get
that grandpa storyline, I really see that grandpa storyline. Because now...
Let's bring that grandpa back from the past so he could kill you.
What if the grandpa ends up killing one of them?
Make it really dark and have him kill the 5-year-old.
Now, like, but when they go back into the normal time frame, those people are back there, you know? What if the brother doesn't disappear? He gets murdered by the grandpa.
Get out of here.
What?
Okay, well, I mean, I think that beyond what we've come up with, it's going to be details. It's going to be like, you know, little details throughout the story that make it good, that make it better.
Yeah.
But like, gun to our heads, gun to John Wick's dog's head.
Yeah.
We had to come up with at least a foundation that would make it engaging, that would make it where like people are actually going to enjoy it. This is a fun movie. It didn't ruin the original franchise.
Yes.
And that I think we've actually kind of figured out.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Here's what the thing is. sorry. I just came up with something. Listen. This one I'm serious about though. Okay. So she finds out during her time that one of the brother, because they're just two kids walking around, there's this clock on the time machine that's counting down, but the brother gets taken into like child custody.
Okay.
But she knows from the future timeline that like at a certain time there's like a, you know, something happens where she now can sneak in, grab the brother and get out of there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like there's something where in the future she knows that like, oh, this system that they use, you could compromise it with like a paper clip. You know?
Okay.
That like, you know, whatever.
Yeah.
Like the door locks electronically, you know? But what people didn't know is that like, if you just shove a paper clip into that card reader, it short-circuited and the door would open, you know, like laughing, you know? But anyway, she knows this, so she can actually get in there, get her brother by using future knowledge to hack the system. But she still has to get her brother out of there into the time machine in time. And she's like running out of time to do it.
Yeah.
Something like that.
That's what I'm saying, though. It's like anything that we do that's going to like make the movie better, it's going to be details.
Oh, Okay. You saw that as a detail. I thought that was...
Well, I mean, it's not like a plot point, or like, I mean, it is a plot point, but it's, you know, it's part of like, I think that the foundation though we've actually kind of figured out.
Okay.
I'm satisfied. I'm satisfied with what we've done here.
Yeah. Do you still think they shouldn't do it, or do you think that they should do it?
Should do what?
Oh, Back to the Future 4.
Oh, I still think they shouldn't do it.
Yeah. What if they told us,
even with our incredible script?
Yeah. Even if we could write the script for it, would you or would you not do it?
Oh my gosh,
I wouldn't do it.
I don't think I'd have the stomach for it.
Yeah.
You know, I don't think I'm that conceited.
Yeah.
That to think that like, oh, I'm just that good of a writer.
Yeah.
That like it's like if I'm gonna do a time travel movie, I'm gonna make an original one, and try and do it like I'll try and do mine justice, and maybe I'll try and compete with Back to the Future. Yeah. But I'm not gonna take something that exists and act like, oh, I could do it better. Like get out of here.
Yeah.
Like, you know? Like it's not your idea. You know, it's someone else's idea, and you're like adding stuff to it, and then like sitting on your high horse. Like, no,
Yeah.
I'm not gonna do that. Not that I'm bitter about it.
Yeah.
So I think we can move on.
Okay.
And you wanted to talk a little bit about the fears that you get.
Okay.
As a writer.
Yeah.
There were some writing fears. Do you want to take the reins here a little bit about what you mean?
Yeah, so I think anytime you're writing, there's going to be just a lot of hesitation. And for me, I actually started out writing novels. So, and then the first novel I wrote was I think it's called like a NaNoWriMo. But there's this thing where... This was a really good one, though, because there's this thing where it's like, hey, on the month of, like, I think it's October, you spend that month and you write a novel. You do, like, 50,000 words. You don't worry if it's good or not. You just try and write it. And then if you get a 50,000 word little, thing together, that is basically a small novel, and you have written a novel, and you can say you've written a novel. And it's a way of kind of being like, it doesn't have to be good. You can, you can basically like put in something like, oh, like Bob, then you come up short on words, and you're like, well, now like add his last name to every single time you say Bob, and now you have like an extra word in there, and now you can add like, like you can describe him, tall Bob,
It's just getting to the finish line.
Yes, so you're trying to do that. So my first novel was actually that, which I think was a great way of doing it.
It's a good exercise.
Yeah, you just let it pour out as best you can.
Yeah.
With my second novel, I then wondered, do I even have a second novel in me? Because when you write your first novel, my first one, because I was writing it so fast, like it was like 90% that original character was me.
Yeah.
90% all the surrounding characters were people I knew.
Right.
Like 90% of it was stories that I had lived through. Right. It was basically like an autobiography without being an autobiography.
Yeah.
So then I'm like, okay, second novel, what's left in the gas tank? Is it just that like kind of like B-side stuff I didn't put in the novel?
The remaining 10%.
Yeah. Which I think a lot of people do. They'll just do their second screenplay, their second novel, and it's just that like what was left over from the first one.
Right.
Because it takes you like, if you write your first thing at 20 years old, it took you 20 years to write your first thing. And you're putting 20 years worth of stories and experiences into it. Yeah. And now it's like, what's left for the next one? So what I ended up doing for the next one was, I got to a point where I felt like I've got the story, I feel ready to do it. But I wasn't writing. I couldn't get myself to start writing. So what I would do is like, I would just keep my notebook with me, and I would just put it down next to me. And I just wouldn't think about it, but it was just there next to me.
Yeah.
And it was there next to me for like weeks.
Yeah.
Where like, it's just there.
Yeah, yeah. Taunting you.
Yeah, it's just there. But I wasn't worrying about it.
Yeah.
I just was leaving it next to me. And then one day I just started writing. Mm-hmm. And then I think there's this weird thing that happens because with my second novel, I went like more that fantasy route where I was just building my own world.
Okay. Yeah.
So the first one's a little bit more like autobiography. Second one's a little bit more fantasy. And then I get to this point where I get about halfway through, and I lose all motivation to write because the excitement is gone.
Yes.
So all the excitement's gone, and now it's just work.
Right.
And the motivation's gone, and now you have
Tedious.
to. And this is normal. It happens with every single thing I've ever done.
Every story I've written,
Yeah, you have to just trudge through. You have to expect this to happen, and now like just put the work in and get through it. Then what happens is you get to kind of like that final section, that final chapter, and you don't want to write it.
Yeah,
you really
then you're done.
Yes, you really, really don't want to write it because then it's over.
Yeah,
and you have to force yourself to do it. Because you really don't want it to end.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah. And sometimes it's because you don't want that journey to end. Sometimes it's because if you have a finished product, now you have this feeling where you have to show it to people and you're afraid to do that.
Yeah.
And anyway, you have to do it. So you get through it, you finish it. And now when you finish it, you have about a day or two of elation because you finished this thing.
Yes.
And then you get depressed.
Yes.
and this is something that like the like Olympic athletes go through, because you go through 4 years of training, you get the Olympics, you get your gold medal or whatever medal it is, and then you're super depressed for like 6 months.
Right.
Because you don't know what to do with yourself.
Yeah.
Because you just lost your purpose by finishing this thing.
Right.
So you're gonna be super down after you're done with this, because now you don't know what to do with yourself. That's fine. Then you're going to be afraid to show it to people because you've invested so much of yourself into this thing. And for me, the trick is to always, eventually I got to the point where I wanted the product to be better than like, I didn't care so much about how I felt about it. I just wanted to have better art.
Yeah.
So like, if you're putting the art first, you're okay with the criticisms and you're going to hear things and you're going to be constructive about everything that people say about it.
Right. Yeah.
If you're putting yourself first, you're not going to want to hear anything. Anything bad. You're going to want to hear only good stuff.
That is something about art. I hear a lot of artists, a lot of indie filmmakers that are like, make it, for you. If it's like, you're true to yourself and yada, yada, yada.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's fine. That's great. But it's also like, that's a starting point. You write for yourself when you're first starting.
Yes.
But it's not about you. Like, you're writing for the people that are going to read it. You're writing for the people that are going to see it. Like, you're writing for everybody except for you.
Yeah.
So it's like, there's more than just yourself at stake. You're putting yourself out there for everybody else. It's not about you anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. There's for the people who can't stand that, though, there's like, I guess, like, musicians and artists. Sometimes they'll have a like one for them, one for me rule, where they'll write a song for the audience and then they'll write a song for themselves because they need to like express themselves in the way that they want to express themselves. But nobody wants to hear or listen to or read the stuff that there's like just too small of an audience for that, But anyway, and then you're gonna have, or at least I had this. It took me 5 novels. On my 5th novel, what was in my head, finally I could get down on paper. What was in my head. And there's this weird disconnect when you're starting out where what you think what's in your head you're going to be able to put down on paper, you cannot.
Right.
That doesn't work. And then you also think that, oh, well, if I get good enough, what's in my head will get put down on paper. But that's kind of not true either. It's almost like the two converge, like reality of you have this physical thing that you have to do, put words down on paper.
Yeah.
And your brain is now thinking in a way that is putting words down on paper meet. And now you're thinking in the written form.
Right.
And and it's like the same thing probably with directing as well, I would assume.
Yeah, yeah. Because like the way that you see things in your head is different from the way that like maybe a camera would see things, or it's different from the way that your eyes see.
Yeah.
If I am imagining something, it's an experience.
Yeah.
It's not a visual thing. And along those same lines, it's not a book. You know, like I'm not thinking in a book.
Yeah.
It's an experience. So I have to like almost translate my thoughts from an experience into the proper wording in the proper order that gets the point across and makes somebody feel something.
Yeah.
And that's difficult to do. It takes a lot of time to be able to get to that point. The thing that I feel like I get the most compliments on in my writing is my dialogue, where people are like, "This is like really good," and it's like I dabble in music, and so I kind of focus on having a rhythm to the dialogue.
Yeah.
Where it's like you want it to feel natural, you want it to feel like a conversation, but you don't want it to be a conversation, because if you have a conversation with your friend, there's a lot of like. A lot of this, a lot of you know, like just stupid stuff that you just kind of naturally put out of your head because you're hanging out with your friend.
Right.
But when that's on camera, and somebody's watching it, they're like, "Man, this is annoying. Like, what is that?"
Yeah.
Like, there needs to be a flow to what's being said. So it's like you're not actually doing what's natural. You're doing what it's an imitation of what's natural. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
It's an impression of what's natural.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I think Hugh Grant does the normal talk very well, but he's so charismatic that he pulls it off.
Yes. Well, it's meticulously planned out.
Yes.
Like, or, I mean, you know, maybe it's not. Maybe it just comes naturally to him.
Yeah.
But it feels meticulously planned out. Like, he's not going to stumble over his words in a way that's annoying. He's stumbling over his words in a way that's almost melodic.
Yes.
You know, there's a rhythm to it.
Yeah. Then.
Yes.
Yeah, the fears of writing, but then there is writer's block.
Yes.
Don't listen to anyone who says there isn't writer's block. I one time heard someone say there isn't writer's block, and they didn't think that there was writer's block because there isn't a such thing as talker's block. Like, you never have a block while you're talking. That's not true. Yeah. I've gotten talker's block. If you're under enough stress in the right way, you will have a block at absolutely anything that you're trying to do, where you are stumbling and desperately trying to like just say a sentence.
Yeah.
With your mouth.
Or even listening. Like you'll just like in a conversation with someone, they'll say something to you and you're like, "I'm sorry, could you repeat that?" Like,
there's a block for everything. And it's similar. Writer's block is kind of like similar to like when you can't maybe fall asleep. Where falling asleep is a relaxing thing. And if you are not relaxed, if you're anxious, if you're thinking about like, I can only get 8 hours of sleep and then I got to get up in the morning and you can't fall asleep when you're anxious because sleep is a relaxing thing.
Yeah.
Which is why you're always falling asleep when you're watching a movie, because you have that like zone out period where you're just now enraptured in the movie and then you just fall asleep and you don't even realize you fell asleep.
Yeah.
If you're thinking about the movie and trying to fall asleep, now you can't fall asleep. Because you're thinking about falling asleep, which is an anxious thing. So writing is similar in that way. If you're anxious about writing, it's going to be very, very difficult to write.
Right.
Yeah. Writing requires a little bit of relaxation where your brain is spinning, you know, thinking about the dialogue, thinking about the characters, thinking about the direction things are going to go in.
Yeah.
You know, but that creative side of your brain is flashing, but the other side that's worried about, am I going to get this done? Am I going to get that done? That is released.
Yeah.
And pushed out.
And if I could kind of elaborate, it's like a forced relaxation in that you're not going to be able to write if you have like busy thoughts.
Yes.
It's why it's so difficult to write when you if you're working a full-time job
Yeah.
and you get home and you're like, no, I'm just going to write like 20,000
Yeah.
20,000 words, like, whatever. And it's like, I can't write anything. It's like, well, you just had a big long day where you were using your brain all day and
Yes.
your thoughts are busy.
Yes.
And it helps if you have a job where, you're not thinking too hard.
Security guard.
Right. Or like if you get home and it's like, I'm not even going to think about work. I'm not going to think about the fact that I have to wake up tomorrow to go to work. Like I have to empty my head of all other thoughts because I need to write right now.
Yeah.
And so it's like it's this forced relaxation so you can be analytical about what you're doing.
Yeah. What I used to do is I'd go on I would write, then I would go on a walk for like an hour or two.
Yeah.
To decompress. Sometimes it would take me like a half an hour, sometimes it would take me an hour to just decompress, get all of it out, then start working on what I'm going to be doing for the next day.
Yeah.
So then like now you can relax, sleep, and then the next day it just sort of like pours out of you because you've just been spending all that sleeping time letting it ferment.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's sort of like it is that like if you're playing tennis and you're stiff, you can't even swing your arm. But you have to swing your arm loose and strong at the same time to hit the ball. And like it's sort of this weird contradictory thing. Like, how am I both strong, tight, and loose at the same time to accomplish a goal?
Yeah.
And writing is a similar thing in your brain where you're both being strong in one way and loose in another way.
Yeah, it's a mental exercise.
Yes.
Yeah, it is difficult. I took kind of a different path. I started on screenwriting. And it was a lot more about, the idea for me when I first started, more about the idea than the execution, where it's just like, I want it to be this groundbreaking thing that no one's ever thought of. And, like I want it to be about the mind. I want it to be about the, time. I want it to, make people think. And so you get this thing out and it's a great idea.
Yeah.
You think. And then it's a terrible execution, but that doesn't matter to you because the idea is so good.
Yeah.
And the route that I took was to just start letting people read it, which is terrifying.
Yeah.
And then letting them tear it apart, which is brutal.
Yeah.
And it hurts, and you take it personally because it's so much of yourself, it's so much vulnerability, and then they're just like, okay, so this sucks, this is, kind of what I don't like about it, and I'm like, okay. And that is maybe the quickest and most brutal way to get better at something.
Yeah.
Is like, okay, well, next time I write something, I'm going to, like, take these words to heart and try and, like, do it better next time. So that was kind of my process, and it was my process for filmmaking as well, where like I have short films that are up on YouTube that still will get like a comment talking about how crappy it is.
Yeah.
And it's like, all right, like it's from somebody who's like never probably I don't know, like it's interesting because it's like there's the stuff that people critique is like, okay, yeah, they were right. And then sometimes they critique something where it's like, the heck are they talking about? I can't even take this guy seriously. Like, that's the dumbest thing to critique.
Yeah.
But it's like, I think that I've gotten good at letting that stuff roll off my back. Where it's like, okay, yeah, like I know which critiques to take and be like, all right, I'll do better next time. And I know which critiques to be like, you don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
But yeah, it takes a lot of brutality if you go that path, which is the path I took, unfortunately. Just putting stuff out, letting people tear it apart.
Yeah.
And then, being depressed about it for however long, and then like, okay, like I'm just gonna try and make it better next time.
Well, yeah, you're a tougher man than I am. It's a hard, but yeah, if your intention is I want to get better.
Yeah.
I want to get better, as fast and as streamlined as I can, then yeah, people critiquing it, then you just you don't listen to every critique. You listen to the critiques that are the same. Where if 2 or 3 or 4 people are saying the same thing, now that's something you need to pay attention to. But a lot of times it's like, because if I have a critique, I'll be like, this is sort of my preference. And if you keep that in mind, then like, okay, maybe this is just your own thing, But if you're hearing my preference from a bunch of different people, now you're like, maybe there's not an issue with this, reader or watcher. Maybe there's an issue with something that I'm doing.
There's a difference between like this was an odd cut, and then like hearing that from multiple people, and it's like, oh, you know what? Yeah, like that was an odd cut.
Yeah.
Or like somebody starting to like assign intention to a character, especially in horror films.
Yeah.
Where they're like, what? They see someone and then they just stand there? Like, I would have come in with a baseball bat, and it's like, you would get out of here. You wouldn't have done crap. Like, have you ever like been scared and then frozen?
Yes.
Like, anybody with life experience could tell you that this is how somebody reacts in a horror situation.
Yeah.
But everybody who has that critique, it's difficult for me to take them seriously. Where it's like, so you just don't have any life experience then? Like, get out of here. Like, I'm not going to take you seriously.
Yeah, some people freeze. Some people run.
Man, if
fight.
I were there, man, I would have hit him. That monster would have hit the floor. Get out of here. You jerk.
Would have been 2 sounds. Me hitting him. No. that thing.
Him hitting the floor.
I think, I don't know. Is there anything we didn't really touch upon when it comes to like writing, fears and...
I don't know. I don't think so. I think that really the main thing to take away from it is that that kind of fear and how long it takes and the depression that comes afterwards. It's all very, very scary and new the first, 2-3 times that you do it.
Yeah.
But then you start to learn the structure, you start to learn the rules, you start to get familiar enough with the rules that you can break them and still make it really, really good, sometimes better. The rules are there for amateurs, kids. So once you get to that point, your stuff just gets better. Your content is better.
Yeah.
And you look back at that first project that was like really personal to you, and you're like, this was kind of garbage, and like it was so much of me, but it was like I didn't know what I was doing. It's a skill like anything else. You need to practice. You need to do a lot of it. But once you get past all of that, you come up with a lot of ideas. You can come up with them frequently. I don't know if I'd say quickly. But you know how to manage them, you know how to get them on paper, and you know how to make them entertaining, where people are like, this is really, really good. Yeah. So yeah, I think that's kind of the main takeaway, is that there is a finish line. Like if you keep doing it, you keep getting it out there. It's a little brutal at first, but like now you have this skill, and it's something that you don't get worse at. It's you get better at it every time. Yeah. So that's the main takeaway, I think.
Yeah. And, and you have, I don't think, in your whatever the last project you worked on was, that's not your last project. That's your first project. That leads to now the better project, which is your next project, because it's going to be better. Yeah. And you have to just keep going. You gotta want it to be better, and you gotta want to work at it to make it better too.
Yeah. What did you learn from your last project?
Yeah.
Like, apply that in a better way on your next project. All right. We're running pretty long, but...
let's do it.
Did you want to do the game?
Yeah, let's do it.
We got a game. It's called...
Go ahead.
It's called Dinner and a Movie.
Yeah.
Well, you want to explain?
I don't even know if I can, but I'll try. So, Dinner and a Movie... is basically you have like a dinner date with somebody. You're just going to take somebody out to dinner, and you have to pick, depending on who this person is and their situation, you have to pick the perfect movie to go along with this dinner date that you're having. That's that's my approach to it, at least.
All right. So my understanding was that it was more of a scenario.
Okay. Yes.
That you are in. A scenario that you exist in.
Yes.
And what is the movie that you watch that pairs perfectly with this particular scenario?
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay. Let's see Let's see which one's better then. Maybe you did a better job than I did.
I mean, I went into more of a fantastical and
You want me to give you my first one here?
Go ahead. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Here's the first one. You're 20 years old.
Okay.
And your dinner date is a woman 30 years your senior. Pick the perfect movie for the night.
All right. So there's some obvious choices that you definitely do not want to pick.
Okay. Right?
Because you can pick The Graduate.
Yes. But it's like...
Yeah. But that would, I mean, that almost kind of is like, it's not going to work out between us.
It's going to get you a slap in the face.
Yeah.
That's going to get you.
You could pick Harold and Maude, which is going to get a harder slap in the face.
So, yeah, Harold's like 20 or 18 and Maude is like 80. That's 80, Harold and Maude. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. What would be a good movie to pick? Yeah.
I think that the best movie to pick is going to be Back to the Future because it's Marty and his mom. And it's flattering,
Yeah.
It's kind of a hint,
Yeah. Yeah. I don't think I would pick Back to the Future.
No? Okay.
Yeah.
What would you have picked?
I don't know what I would pick. It's a kind of a tough one. I might pick something like As Good as It Gets.
Okay.
Because it's sort of like Jack Nicholson's kind of like an immature whatever, and Helen Hunt is sort of the mature motherly, person who kind of like brings him around to being a more mature person.
Elevates him.
Yeah. So I feel like it would be a kind of like, he's the older person in the situation too, and Helen Hunt's obviously younger. So I think it would be kind of a way of not addressing the situation while addressing the situation.
That's not bad. It's not a bad pick.
All right. You want to give me one?
Yeah, okay. So, in my scenario, you went to a concert last night, really loud music, and you are currently temporarily deaf.
Okay, yes. Okay, yeah, like what movie now goes perfectly with this situation?
Yeah.
I kind of like how you're doing it like a scenario, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you could go like a silent film like City Lights.
Yeah.
Or The General.
Yes.
You could do something like that. You could go a foreign film like Life is Beautiful because there's subtitles.
There's subtitles, yeah.
Yeah, so you're going to be reading the subtitles anyway.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah. What were you thinking?
I was thinking City Lights or
Okay.
General.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So yeah, you were like right in line with me there. Wow. Okay. You got another one for me?
Yes. So here we go. This is my second one. Your dinner date is a friend, and you suspect that he can transform into a monster. What movie do you pick?
Okay, so you could do this in two different ways. You could do this in an accusatory way.
Yes.
Or you could do this in more of a sensitive way.
Right.
It's like you want to be the understanding friend. Okay, so the sensitive way, there's two picks that come to mind.
Okay.
One is Shrek.
Oh, good one. Yeah.
And the other one is Teen Wolf.
Okay, yes. Teen Wolf was the one I was thinking about. Yeah.
Okay.
Go ahead.
The less sensitive way.
Yes.
You go the Wolfman.
Oh, good one.
Or the Incredible Hulk.
Yes, the Incredible Hulk was the other one I was thinking about. Yeah. Yeah.
All right. That's not that. That's pretty good.
Yeah. All right, what do you got?
Okay. You've just hit somebody with your car.
Oh, okay.
It was a hit and run. Nobody knows it was you. You go home to watch a movie. What movie do I watch after the hit and run? Yeah, you just hit someone. You just hit a pedestrian.
I guess I could watch Signs. Because in Signs, Mel Gibson's wife gets killed by a guy who's drunk and ends up hitting her. He doesn't hit and run, but he ends up hitting her.
Yeah.
Gosh, a hit and run. I could watch like The French Connection. He doesn't actually hit anyone, but there's that car chase where he's smashing into people.
That's a great car chase.
Yeah. Am I trying to feel better about myself here, or am I just trying to like...
That's entirely up to you.
Yeah, isn't there a scene in like one of the Hangover movies where somebody's running with a bag over their head and they get hit by a car?
I don't even know. I don't even remember.
Gosh, I'm trying to think of like... I mean, there's that Dustin Hoffman scene where he almost gets hit by the taxi driver and he says like, "I'm walking here."
Oh, Midnight Cowboy?
Midnight Cowboy, yeah.
Yeah.
What movie were you thinking about?
I was thinking of Urban Legend. But then it's like maybe you're kind of like thinking maybe that would freak you out a little bit though.
Was it Urban Legend or was it I Know What You Did Last Summer?
Oh no, you're right. Wait,
I Know What You Did Last Summer. They hit the guy. Yes,
it's I Know What You Did Last Summer.
Yes. Okay. That's a good one.
Yeah, whatever. Urban Legend. I Know What You Did Last Summer. It's another one of those '90s horror films.
All right, you want my next one?
Yeah, that's the next one.
Here's my third one. Your dinner date was recently rescued from a desert island. What movie do you pick?
Okay. Well, you might, if you wanted to stir up old feelings in her, you might do Castaway.
Right.
But
Tom Hanks.
It might depress her.
It doesn't have to be a her necessarily every time. It could just be anybody,
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, it could also be, I mean, if you want something a little more uplifting, maybe like The Black Stallion.
Oh, yeah. Because he was on an island for a little bit. He was on an island
for a short period of time.
Yeah. That's a great film.
And then it's a great movie, yeah. So yeah, maybe The Black Stallion. I don't know if I can think of another one that would work well. But...
Yeah. Yeah, I was thinking kind of like Castaway. That was sort of the main one I was thinking about.
Yeah.
I feel like also like Terminal is actually a good one. I think it's Terminal with Tom Hanks.
The Terminal,
once again, because he's kind of like stuck in the terminal.
Yeah.
But I do think it would probably be the worst movie choices to show someone who was just stuck on an island is showing them a movie about somebody. Robinson Crusoe with James Bond. Guy.
I don't think I've seen that one.
It's got GoldenEye James Bond.
Okay, Pierce Brosnan.
Pierce Brosnan, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, there's multiple versions of that movie. But yeah.
All right. So I got. All right. Here's another one.
Okay.
You have the ability to see two-dimensional images in full 3D, as if you were a part of the image.
Okay.
So what movie do you watch where you like?
Oh.
You get to look around and be a part of it.
Yeah. What's the movie? The first movie I can think of to watch would probably be Return of the Jedi.
Ooh,
because
that's a good one.
Because then I could go into Jabba's palace, and I can go into like the Endor forest.
Yeah.
Avatar is always like a big one too, because I think that one looks pretty cool.
Yeah.
I wouldn't do Jaws.
You don't know if you'd pick a horror film.
I would not do Jaws or Arachnophobia.
No, yeah, that's probably a bit much.
Those would scare the bejesus out of me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't. Desperado would be a fun one with Antonio Banderas when he's in the bar,
Yeah.
Just gunslinging.
Yeah,
gunslinging in the bar. Why? What movie were you thinking of for that one?
I mean, really any like fantastical action movie, something like Lord of the Rings or something, even like Transformers. I feel like would be fun to just kind of like, this is crazy.
Yeah.
But yeah, like Lord of the Rings was kind of the first thing that came to mind. It's like this would be really cool to just kind of
Lord
like,
of the
walk
Rings
around and see everything.
Yeah. Lord of the Rings is a good one. Yeah. You want me to give you another one?
Sure.
Okay. Number 4. Your dinner date is an undercover agent who is currently wearing somebody else's face. What movie do you pair dinner and a movie? What's the movie?
What's funny is that the first thing that came to mind is not the obvious one. Silence of the Lambs is the first thing that came to mind.
I didn't even think about that.
She's wearing someone else's face. But, but yeah, I think that, so...
Yeah.
So, Mission Impossible 2...
Oh, good one. Yeah.
It's the worst Mission Impossible, but it has the most face pulls.
Yeah. With doves flying.
Like, yeah.
The doves fly after the face.
Doves
face
flying,
pulls.
yeah.
Yeah.
Just a bunch of John Woo doves and face pulls. But yeah, the Mission Impossible movies have got to be like, you know, the obvious choice for that.
You didn't think of Face Off?
Face
With John Travolta and Nicolas Cage?
Another John Woo.
Yeah.
Man, what is this? John Woo just loves pulling people's faces off. No, that didn't even occur to me.
Yeah.
Mission Impossible was like
Mission Impossible
and Silence of the Lambs.
I did not even think of Silence of the Lambs. I'm kind of, I'm curious if curious if there's going to be comments with people just putting like ridiculous, ones down there that we didn't think about.
Yeah, I'd like to hear it.
What else? What do you got? Number 4.
Okay. You have the ability to hear a character's thoughts.
Yeah.
What movie do you watch where you want to get to hear what they're thinking?
I can tell you the movie I don't watch. It's Dune, because we already hear every character's thoughts constantly throughout the movie. I'm talking about the David Lynch Dune from the 80s. Okay, you can hear a character's thoughts. What movie do I think I would watch The Godfather.
Ooh.
I think The Godfather would be a good one. I think hearing Marlon Brando's thoughts would be really interesting. Hearing, Al Pacino's thoughts as Michael, that would be really interesting. Let me see.
Yeah. That's a really good one.
Yeah. Another one, I'm trying to think of a movie with like a really smart person in it who doesn't necessarily talk too much, Maybe Good Will Hunting. Yeah. Because then, what is he thinking?
Yeah.
When he's doing this stuff,
Yeah. That's good. Those are good. Those are good picks. I wasn't really sure where to go with this one. Really? Like, I thought maybe kind of a small character piece, something like The Breakfast Club.
Yeah.
But then The Breakfast Club, they're talking so much about their personal feelings that it's you kind of hear their thoughts anyway.
Yeah.
But yeah, The Godfather's a really good pick. I like that a lot. Good Will Hunting.
You want my number? Want my number?
How many have we done?
We've done 4. You want my number 5?
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. Number 5. Your dinner date is a lawyer who just got out of the hospital. Turns out he was attacked by a large animal while he was on the toilet. For anyone who gets this one immediately, I think it's going to be pretty funny. For the people who don't, it's coming.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so I think Jurassic Park.
Yes. Jurassic Park has the lawyer on the toilet get eaten by the T-Rex.
Yeah, I think it'd be a good way to. It'd be a good movie to show him too, because it's like, hey, could have been worse, right?
Yeah. Sure, you lost the case, but you got disbarred, but you could have gotten eaten by a T-Rex.
Yeah. Any movie with a bear attack would be a good pick too. The Revenant.
Yeah, it's almost like Jaws. You almost don't want to show. It's funny because the movies we end up picking are probably the worst movies to show somebody in these situations.
Yeah. Oh man, yeah. It's the obvious way to go though. Man, that's funny. Okay. Do you want to hear my last one?
Yes.
All right. You have a rare disease where you must remain in a state of constant stress. Otherwise, your heart will explode.
What's that movie, Crank?
Yes.
Yeah, with Jason Statham?
Yeah.
Crank.
I like how we both did it for our last ones. It's super obvious.
If you are, though, in that state, it's almost like what is the perfect movie to go along with it, where it just is never...
Yeah.
that
yeah.
non-stop action where there's no
Like,
downtime.
The other movie that came to mind was Hardcore Henry.
Oh yeah, Hardcore Henry.
It's like that's just constant,
Yeah.
So I like that one a lot too.
There's not a lot of movies that are super constant though, where there isn't that downtime.
Yeah, yeah.
You know.
It's Hardcore Henry and Crank.
Yeah. Matrix Reloaded.
Matrix Reloaded.
I mean, it has downtime, but it has like it has
downtime.
very long, drawn-out action scenes that last for a really long time.
Yeah, yeah.
Those are pretty good.
Yeah.
Which style do you like better?
I think I like your style better. I think I'm gonna try it your way next time.
Really? Okay. Maybe I'll try it. Maybe I'll try it your way next time.
Yeah, we'll switch.
We'll just switch and just to mix it up.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think that those are some good pages.
Yeah.
So until next time, see you later, brother.
Later on.